Good morning, it's Joyful Hermit. We had a good comment question combination about evil and sinning and the devil, because I had mentioned that, behind sins in people in general, the devil uses people and tempts them to sin, and then they fall to sin. And yes, sometimes the person asked, is this evil? And yes, it is evil when people sin. And the person is feeling pressure from society or from church or from others that we should forgive sins. And with this understanding, I find it an understanding of people, why they sin and who's behind it. It's always going to be the devil behind. That's the author of evil, is the devil, and keeps evil going in the world. But and the pressure to forgive, I think it just depends on us if we consider it a pressure or not. It's wise to forgive, because if we don't forgive, we're the ones that are harming ourselves, because we hold this upset in us, or I don't even know if it's that. We're just not doing as Jesus did. He forgave. He forgave those who sinned, like the thieves on either side of him. He spoke with them. The one who repented, he forgave. And it is true. I've heard it said before, well, what if the person doesn't ask for forgiveness? Do we need to forgive? Well, no, we don't need to forgive at all if we don't want to. I'm not saying you have to or anything. I do, whether or not the person asks me forgiveness. And I've come to try to understand people. And sometimes it gets me into tight situations for myself, harm for myself, such as how much I understood my handyman who had issues, emotional and some psychological problems of anger from his divorce. And he was an adult, hyperactive adult. And he'd gotten worse in the last 2 years since he had worked here before. More trouble focusing. So he'd make more errors and more inconsistent. He was trying harder to control his temper. But my understanding of him, in a way, backlashed on me, because when I ran out of money and couldn't keep hiring him, and also for indefinite results, I think he became paranoid. So he didn't even come when he said he would to get his last $30 I owed him. And I said I couldn't pay for a good 2 months. I won't have any money to do that, to do extra. And that a lot of the things I can do myself now, which obviously the job's going to stop at some point. But this is his reaction then of basically quitting, of being angry and not following through, not speaking, not coming even to get his hat or his last money. So, and I had contacted him a couple times, and I'm just not going to anymore. Not going to beg. But for him to come get his pay or his hat, mercy, no. See, they start acting up if they're not crated, because they want my attention so much. But spoiled dogs. It's Lovey's birthday today. We sang happy birthday this morning, and Mercy was cocking her head back and forth trying to figure out what this was. And we added her name into the birthday song so she wouldn't be left out. So just so we know, they're very pampered. But as far as forgiveness, I think it's, for me personally, it's good for me to understand why a person acts the way they act. And I'll just use the handyman as an example. Part of that is he cooperates with evil. He's been tempted by the devil to have bad temper at times, and to have paranoia that someone's against him, which I wasn't. I sincerely didn't have extra cash just to keep paying for things that I need to do. I was running low. I don't even have money for my taxes. So I had to sell off stuff. So anyway, on hand, and what I have left is just dwindling in my investment from my parents. The investments just rolled over my third, and it's down, down, down. So there were legitimate reasons why I couldn't. I wasn't just being mean, but also things that remain I can do. It's not going to be easy, but that's it. But I forgive him. I'm not going to be in a stew. I do regret in a way that I didn't have anyone better. I've tried others, and he has the skills. Now it's at a point where emotionally and things, if he is frustrated, he gets easily frustrated. It's his personality, and it's getting worse with age, I suppose, or whatever's going on in his life. And so he's not consistent, can't be consistent with his quality of work. Otherwise, he's a nice person. He means well. He's trying, thinking of other situations where people sin, that it is sheer evil. People who are cruel or mean or murderers or all that, yes. But who's behind that? What's behind that? Often we'll go back into their childhood and find things. But it's the devil that tempts them. There are people who are in terrible circumstances who aren't killing as adults or aren't abusing children or things like that. So they overcome that. So people who sin, they agree and cooperate with the devil. Maybe I didn't emphasize that. When we fall, even if it's not a conscious cooperation, and in my case, with my fall, I knew I was begging, give me strength. I knew who was behind it, who was taking me down. It was the devil. And my situation wasn't anything horrible, but it was bad. I mean, it was wrong. So, and I think there's consequences for it. And there's consequences for anyone who sins. And God metes out the consequences in different ways. And I think, such as in my way, there's certain things I won't necessarily, I could have advanced further at the time. And I held that up. But I also learned excellent lessons because I repented and I knew immediately, but I had trouble getting out of a situation. It was a tricky, it was a trick of the devil, the whole thing. And in fact, I just watched a program in which a person was not blackmailed, but in a way blackmailed and caught, trapped. There was a person who was very evil who kept ensnaring the person. But, of course, the person could have drawn the line, the person who ended up cooperating with evil and got himself into bad situations because of the sin and evil of another person. We don't have to hang around with these people, no. We're to flee sin, flee evil. But forgiving people doesn't cost us anything, except maybe I don't know if it's pride that would keep us from forgiving someone. I don't think it's pride. It's just a confusion of, like this person asked, am I then basically condoning evil? If I forgive someone, they're evil. Well, we're not really forgiving the evil. We don't forgive the devil. We don't forgive the evil. But we forgive the person who was weak or who had childhood issues or psychological issues. A lot of mentally ill people that have bad disorders, psychopaths, sin a lot, sociopaths, They lie repeatedly, and they do wrong. And sometimes they have sprinklings of psychopath in with their sociopathy. So they commit crimes or just do horrible things to other people, hurt people, emotionally and mentally hurt them, do immoral things that divorces. I consider divorce an evil. And then I can trace back and say that I sinned in a way, in I would think, by not waiting longer, by not listening to my parents more, who begged me to wait and to get to know the person better. And granted, with a sociopath, you can know them 10 years and not know the extent at all of their double lives or their lies or all of that. But I was picking up little things along the way. So there's no guarantee, but I would have had that assurance myself. And I suspect just with the temper, had I known the person longer, the temper would have been too much of a red flag for me. But when you're around somebody a shorter period of time, you can pass by those things, excuse them. As well, everyone has some temper, or that would aggravate you, So, and growing up with a mother with temper, I was sort of used to accepting that, and that's not an excuse for me. So, there's another example, but I forgave my ex-husband. I still forgive him. I forgave him again last year when he influenced my son to not have me come to the wedding. Now, a decent person would say, yes, you have your mother come, even if you're upset with her. And even, he had told him things that weren't true and put more blame on me from years ago. And because he lies, the ex-husband, that's part of and he doesn't, I don't even think he realizes he lies. He's so used to lying. When I was at the end of the marriage, I realized he doesn't even realize he lies. Well, in a way, how can you not forgive someone who's sick? And a lot of people who cooperate with the devil and fall to the devil are sick. Others are weak, like me. I knew right from wrong, but the devil really had me in a what was it called, half Nelson or full Nelson, when somebody's got you around the neck. And I knew it, but I was weak. And I don't even know what I was thinking. I didn't have my mind anymore to stop myself from associating with such a person. And but I did. Eventually, God let me go, and I was begging him, give me strength, give me strength. But God wanted to teach me, and he taught me well. Through that waiting period, I was in anguish, wanting to get out of the situation then. And finally, I was able to myself, by the grace of God, though. But God wanted me to get my own strength. And I've had that strength ever since. So there's always good that comes from a person who repents. But of course, there's people who don't. Well, do we forgive those people, the ones who keep sinning and sinning and sinning? Ask ourselves, what does it cost us to forgive over and over and over? Jesus says forgive 70 times 7 or 77 times 7. It's a simple thing on one level to forgive others. At the emotional level, it's not so easy because they've hurt us, or they've hurt the world, or they've hurt others. If we see something in the news and we're horrified. Yes, I think it's a good practice to forgive strangers that we read about, because they have imprinted in our minds their evil. What they have done is horrific at times. And well, all the time if they're doing something terrible. It's always going to hurt someone. Sin does, even if it hurts their own personhood. But that does not mean that we are condoning or loving evil or forgiving the evil. As it said, forgive the sinner, but not the sin. And to not forgive will always hold some type of anger in us, even if we think not, or even if we think it's a righteous anger. I try to stay clear of righteousness because it can become very easily self-righteousness and an aspect of judging or no mercy. She's been a naughty girl. She likes tissues, and she found one to shred. And just keep it clear in your mind. If it's difficult to, or if you get confused and think, well, am I then condoning evil because I forgive the person who did it, or because I understand that the devil is behind it? And sometimes the devil actually coerces a person. But the person cooperates. Even children, they cooperate with wrong. And it's wrong to cooperate with the devil and with evil and with sin. So we just try to keep it clear in our minds and in our hearts that we are not condoning the evil, but we are forgiving the people who commit the sins. And that doesn't mean that we hang out with them either. You flee from sin. And that's part of the consequence of someone who sins. Depending on what the sin is, they can end up incarcerated with other people who sin, or they can lose friendships over it. There are always consequences to sin. And there are less, there's more. With forgiveness comes some redemption. So we can regain friendships with forgiveness when the person who sinned repents and makes up for the sin, apologizes, and rectifies situations. And other people that don't have to accept their apologies. We're never forced to be friends with sinners. Jesus on the cross decided he would take the one person to heaven with him. He would be there in paradise with them that very day. The criminal to his right asked, will you take me to paradise? Lord, he recognized it was God. Jesus was God. Will you be with me in paradise? And Jesus says, on this day, you will be in paradise with me. So that's a great example of forgiveness. But the other person requested and repented and wanted and felt bad about his sins. So I hope that helps clarify. It's really up to us to decide if we're going to forgive or not. But I think there's ramifications for us if we don't forgive. And that some of the situations can be heartbreaking. You hear of some. There was some son I think it was in Brazil, somewhere in South America, where Brazilian court, and the son of a man who was killed the one who did it in court, shot him right there in court. And so he committed sin then. He committed sin by agreeing with the devil, cooperating with evil to get retribution, and killed his father's killer. So we can think through that situation. That's what can happen when you don't forgive. We weaken ourselves to the devil, to the influence of the devil. When we cannot forgive and we harbor hurt in us, that weakens us, and we can be more easily tempted to commit crime ourselves. And it doesn't have to be a crime. It can be something like lying, all kinds of sins, minor to major sins. And the temptation to them of doing wrong can depend a lot on our dispositions. And if we're tired, or if we're unwell, or if we have personality disorders even, any kind of weak chink in our armor, the devil will easily move in on us. And also it's true, the more we cooperate with the devil, the more the devil comes back, wanting to cooperate more with us, wanting to tempt us more. And I know you're thinking, well, she's making the devil out to be like a person. Well, in a way, yes. It's a fallen angel. It's a spirit. It's got energy. It's a spirit of darkness. And it does have power. Demons have power, but they're not given absolute power. And they don't have power over us at all unless we let them, unless we give up our will and our intellect to them. So we need to get it clear in our intellect, though. What is sin and what is evil? What is forgiveness? And get it clear in our intellect and our will, to keep our will strong. Am I going to fight against forgiveness even? And just say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to forgive. Because in my intellect, I'm thinking that forgiveness is the same as celebrating evil or accepting evil. But that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is letting go of the hurt of something. We know it was wrong. But in some cases, forgiveness is practically a benefit to us to let go of the hurt, let go of the evil that someone has done to us. And if we hold on to it, then we weaken ourselves for the devil to drag us further, to where we can become very angry and resentful of people, of sinners. And it can lead to self-righteousness, that we think we're above. We would never do that. We would never succumb to anything that terrible or that simple of a thing. Who would sin at something so obvious? Well, I did. Obvious it was. And God forgave me. But and I'm grateful for that. I think we can also think through what it's like to not be forgiven. Are we keeping the sinner in a more position to sin even more? I don't know. I'm just thinking through these things. It was a great question. And I understand where it comes from. It's hard to forgive people and to keep it clear what sin is and that the devil is behind it. But that people then cooperate and choose And sometimes we can feel very, very sorry for them because they aren't operating with a full deck of cards sometimes, with full capacity of intellect. There's quite a few people who are weak-minded people. We're born without a great deal of intelligence. And others sometimes will coerce them more easily, as the devil does too, into committing sin. Or their lives are harder. So they get more convinced that they're justified in stealing, for example. And they get caught easily because they aren't as sharp to figure out what they think is going to be the perfect crime. But there's also all these other sins of people who just hurt other people in personal relationships. Those are very hard to forgive because there's no crime, no law that gets them. They can harass, they can bully, they can demean and detract. And I forgave that priest who had 4 sermons, lies about me, putting me down to the whole parish, anyone who came to Mass. Imagine if it was someone just visiting church for the first time, wanting to know, well, what's Catholicism like? And here was this priest tearing down a person, myself was, publicly like that, was his whole topic of his sermon, and lied and went over, that I was trying to, and it was shameful, that I was trying to take the soup kitchen to the Protestants. It just got, oh, how pathetic and sick. Well, he is sick. He was in a bad relationship with this other priest and for years, and was very overweight, so he had a gluttony problem. And he didn't do much work. He was lazy. But he was intelligent. He was cunning and intelligent. He was smart enough. But he had, for years, been in that wrong relationship. I mean, if you become a priest, you take certain vows. So he wasn't even living his vows. So that already the devil had him and could get him further. Well, when I forgave that priest, and I did a door, I refinished a door that was difficult to refinish. That took me quite a while. And I wrote something, but it was in Latin, about the priesthood above on the door lintel in Old English script. I painted on something about the honor of the priesthood. And as I did that door, I thought of him, and I kept asking God, help me to forgive this man. And please take pity on him because he's weak. He was a very weak person. But he was very cunning, and he had me. And he demeaned me enough that he then could go after my son and know that no one would do much about it at the diocese level. And he was right. They didn't. So how could I forgive him? Well, I just did. And I asked God to help me forgive him. The Holy Spirit will help us. Ask God, ask Jesus to help us forgive. The Holy Spirit is the part of the Trinity that binds the love between the Father and the Son, and does he's the teacher, he's an enactor, he's comes and works with us on things. So the Holy Spirit's more of an enactor, part of the Trinity. And it's not that Jesus doesn't come and teach us and all that, but in the scriptures, he's teaching all the way and preaching, teaching and preaching. And by his life, we learn. But that's how we learn to forgive also. But we're also taught you don't hang with sinners. as far as if we're not told you've got to embrace their sins or do things with them, especially if we're weak, or we'd be tempted also to, or they're trying to get us to go along with something. No. Flee evil, flee from sin, flee from the occasion of sin, and that's for our own protection. But those who are strong will. They like Jesus did. He tried to work with the sinners. He taught them, and he stood up to the priests, the high priests, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes. He took them on. They were sinners. They were bad-mouthing him. They were trying to build this case to get him murdered, get him caught, to keep people from listening to him. So they were very evil and deceptive. Jesus forgave them. But it didn't mean that he went along with them. He didn't. He kept right butting up against and speaking truth, beauty, and goodness, even though it was going to kill him, literally kill him to do so. So that's what I want to say about that. The answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is there's no cost at all for us to forgive, other than some emotional cost. I think it comes down to an emotional cost. And I don't think it's too connected with pride. It's not that we're too proud to forgive others. It's that we're too hurt. We're too hurt. And that's how I get around it, is by understanding that it's the evil one, the devil, who incites us to sin to begin with. And that helps me. And I don't forgive the devil. I don't forgive. And when I said that I say thank you to the devil, it's only because I say thank you because you're only turning me all the more to God, or you're turning me all the more to pray, or you're causing me to forgive those who sin against me. Up on my computer this morning popped. It said Null. I thought, is that Nell? The name Nell? But it was Null, Null. Null's birthday is tomorrow. Well, it's my adult son. He's turning 41 tomorrow. And he's blocked me. So Facebook evidently substitutes the word null, as in null and void. So my son has decided he's null and void to his mother. Well, again, right then, I just said this prayer. Lord, I forgive him. I forgive him for this stubborn persistence. Now, who is behind that? Who is behind him dumping me off? Who caused that situation with the grandson? And the bad gossip about my grandson to his two other adult children, to his aunt and uncle. Well, it was the ex-husband, who has had evil in him for years and years. He lies. He hates. He'd vowed he would spend the rest of his life destroying me. Well, he destroyed a relationship. He destroyed the close relationship I had with my son. But my son cooperated with the evil. My son knew, growing up, on his own he knew his dad wasn't the best person. Openly, he knew that. Even when he was a senior in college, he came back with these things his dad had been lying about me to other people, and how ridiculous it was and terrible. Well, but he wanted a dad so badly. And sociopaths are very charming, and narcissists are very tricky people. And he is very successful financially. And that's in our society, to be financially successful and to have a career like be a superintendent of fairly large school districts in the country. That's impressive. You don't stop to think that who started out as a fourth grade teacher did some bad things to his son and his daughter, one of his daughters, and was horrible and was a major womanizer and cheated on his wife all the time. Even when I was pregnant, he would, maybe especially so, and lied in his interviews, lied about his children, what role he had in his children lives, and that I was crazy and all these things. And so the son he knew that, but he blocked it out because the dad infiltrated over the last 18 years since college. I helped the kids get through college. The dad didn't help at all. But then he moved in. I'm not literally moved in, but, phone calls, visited. The son visited him. I found out all this later, quite a bit. He lives in a ritzy mountain town, and would go skiing and eat out and all this, wine and dine, and lied about me and convinced the son, but my son cooperated with it. My son had already turned against God, turned against church, was angry at me, thinking that somehow connecting me with his choice. It was his choice to become Catholic. He begged and begged. I wasn't going to let him. Thought he was too young to make that kind of decision. And I didn't know enough yet myself. But oh, no, he convinced me. He was 12, and I let him join the Catholic Church. Well, he loved his high school. He loved St. Bonaventure University, despite picking up a drinking problem. That was his cooperation. Other students went there and didn't have a drinking problem when they left. Some did. Some probably had one when they started there. He did not. But my son cooperated with the evil. Does that mean that I despise my son or won't forgive him? Well, I already have forgiven him. I forgave again this morning when I saw that null. And I've forgiven the ex-husband. I did again last fall on the wedding day when they were all there and I was not. And that's when God blessed me with those 4 words. And they were over a 6-week period, but they always came on a Sunday morning. And I would just hear this word. The first one was pray. And I didn't know there would be any more. Pray. And I knew it was pray for my children, because that was the main, those were the last 3 ones that I had that I would, meant a lot to me, and meant that I would do for them, and would not be in my hermit mode. If they needed something or wanted me, I would be available. Then came love. Love them. Really, really love. Love the other person. And I knew that meant my children at that time. I knew God was telling me, pray for them. Then the next Sunday, it was love. Love them. Then I think it might have skipped a week, and there was forgive. And that one skipped another week before the final word, because forgive was the hardest. Well, love too. To love no matter what the person has done, no matter the hurt caused. And that's a big one with my ex-husband, what all he caused. Lots of hardship. I've even thought he had time to say, that kid's going to hit us. he could have stepped on the gas and gotten out of the intersection. But I granted to the person, to him, that, I can say there was time, and yes, there was, but the mind doesn't necessarily work that way. So I don't blame him for that. But I thought it. And so that even makes it worse. I wouldn't have had all this agony of my life and the financial hardships and my kids turning on me. It's hard. It's very hard. Particularly when they blocked things out that he did. They don't even remember. Well, one does. The one that he didn't do stuff to directly. The other two have blocked, and they don't remember why we left, why the judge let us out of state to get 2,200 miles away. But, so, forgive was hard. To love the person, love the sinner, hate the sin. I don't even try to hate it. I just try to forgive. Forgive is hard, very, very hard, because you really have to love in order to forgive, to really forgive. You don't have to, but at its deepest levels, it takes a love of a human being, not their actions, but just the fact that they were given life by God, and they were placed on this earth. And sometimes I also realize maybe it was part of my life plan that God willed, practically, that I learned a lot, and I had some good times with that husband. He was the only husband I had, earthly husband. But I don't say God willed it, but he allowed it and brought the most good that could possibly come out of someone who is a sociopath and a narcissist. Well, how did he become that? They're not really sure how somebody becomes. So I've got to take this, I'll stop. Anyway, live was the last. Live your life. So choose if you want to forgive or not.